It's cold outside, it's miserable, it's wet, it's not a nice weekend. Hence, also, I suppose, the way I'm projecting the image for this latest YouTube episode in 2022. So, welcome to Arm Wrestling with COVID-19 in London. And this is, in fact, my number 55, the 55th episode on COVID-19 in London, in the UK, and further afield. Now, weather notwithstanding this miserable wintry weather outside, one thing that has actually struck me, I said number 55, that's a lot of episodes actually. And what has surprised me is that some of you who've been following my YouTube channel or who are aware of it, and sometimes when you have nothing better to do, you sort of say, let's hear what Harry's up to today or what he says today, you will have noticed that I focus on three themes. The first is this one, COVID-19. The second one is on the Middle East, North Africa, or West Asia, North Africa, if you will, and the Gulf. And the third one is on issues to do with Armenia, Armenian matters, and with some particular emphasis on the recent war in the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, what is surprising is that of those three themes, I would have thought that the one that would really trigger a reaction from those who watch my short episodes would be the one on COVID, because it's the most existential, it's the one that has the most impact for all of us living in England or in any of the four nations. And here I digress, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said the four nations, and he said, hold on, Harry. Northern Ireland is not a nation. It's a province of the Republic. Now, don't get upset or don't have any reactions to what I just said. The friend was joking. But I just thought I'd lighten up the mood a bit. Weekend, winter, rain, you know, the whole thing. So what surprised me is that I thought that the most impact would be had by my episodes on the COVID-19. But guess what? No. Many, many more people have been watching my YouTube episodes on Armenian issues and on the MENA and Gulf region than they have on COVID-19. Now, is it because I don't have anything interesting to say? Perhaps. Is it because what I say is what so many other people say, and therefore we are suffering from hypersaturation, overflow of information? Also possible. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to stick to number 55, and I'm going to share with you today a few thoughts about COVID-19, and in particular, the Omicron variant that has caught our attention. Now, why has it caught our attention? It's because of the huge number of cases in across the whole United Kingdom, but particularly in England and also in Europe. I mean, we've heard what President Macron of France has said about those anti-vaxxers and those who do not want to take any of the two jabs or the boosters. He said, je voudrais les emmerder. I'm going to piss them off. In other words, I'm going to make life very difficult for them. If they don't take the jab, they will not be able to do a lot of things in their lives across France. Now, of course, that created a huge reaction by some people in France, and the BBC, of course, reporting the news, did not use the term that the French president used, but given that we are British and we sort of toned down those words, they sort of replaced I want to piss them off with, I want to hassle them. Okay. Hassle them he might well do, particularly in a presidential year. And here in this country also, with the huge number of cases and with the incredible transmissibility, or so we're told, of the Omicron variant, things were looking and are still looking quite iffy. Now, the good thing is, according to what I understand, or what I try to understand, is that although Omicron is much more transmissible, yet, and has a huge number of cases per day, yet the number of beds in hospitals are lower than what they were for the Delta variant, and the symptoms are more flu-like and they're lighter. I was talking to some people, and funnily enough, because of the amount of transmissibility, I know a lot of people actually. I never heard of people from the previous variants, but from this variant, I know people personally, friends or acquaintances, who actually are quarantining, not going to work, or just sick because of the Omicron variant. And the symptoms they're having, by and large, fortunately, luckily, are lighter symptoms, are flu-like symptoms. I even found out today that friends of mine in Lebanon also have got it, and they are all, as a family, they've got it, and they've tested positive, and they're all quarantining. This happens across the world. In the United States, it's really, really running amok. In Europe as well, and it's beginning to show an ugly face in India and in parts of the Arab world as well. So in a sense, I would stick with number 55, despite what the anti-vaxxers have been saying, and despite the incredible campaign by the government using our scientists, as well as some of our more fathomable politicians, to push the idea, the message, get boosted, get boosted, get boosted. Now, it's very interesting, because one thing I'm sure that you've noticed just as much as I've noticed is that the advice changes constantly. And that probably is one of the reasons why some people take what they're being told with a pinch of salt, in addition to the fact that they're really frustrated, they're fed up, they're tired of all this, and they're saying, you know what, we're going to get on with our lives, come what may. But it is true, the changes that happen, even scientists who are supposed to recite the medical Bible to us all when it comes to this, there are contradictions from one scientist to another, let alone with politicians, where it is not hard at times, trust you me, and I'm sure you know this as much as I do, that you can literally drive a coach and horses through some of the political waffle that they deliver us, and that changes all the time. But I don't want to listen now to much of what the politicians are saying. I listen more still to what the scientists are saying, because at the end of the day, haven't we learned enough that politicians' mantra is do what I say, don't do what I do? I'll leave it there. Anyway, one of the things that also struck me today is the latest piece by Nick Triggle, who's the health correspondent for the BBC. And he was reminding us that despite all the concerns we have, and we do, and I do, because the NHS, some of you know, has saved my life in the past, that the NHS is going through very difficult times now, but this is not new. This is something that is cyclical, that keeps on repeating, that keeps on reproducing itself. Every so often, every few years or so, we come across the fact that the NHS is on the verge of collapse, that the NHS is unable to meet its obligations because of the lack of staff, because of the financial problems it has, because of the beds that aren't there, etc., etc. But it seems to me that this time round, 2 years consistently without a break, NHS personnel, be they consultants, registrars, doctors, junior doctors, GPs in practice, administrative people, porters, paramedics and ambulance drivers, everybody, labs, everybody is really tired. And not only tired, you are tired and you're always wary and afraid not to catch the virus. So there is that extra bit of stress and tension. I know that when I go to the supermarket or when I go out or when I'm working, I'm more conscious of how careful and cautious I should be just to avoid getting this dreadful virus. And who knows, maybe initiating a whole set or chain of random reactions that might see me getting out of my flat feet first. So I don't want to do that. So the stress, the fatigue, the tiredness, everything is wearing people down. But you know what? The government has just told us that although Israel is now giving its fourth booster jab, I think it's the first country to do this. We here have decided that no, we don't need it yet. And the word is yet in England. Although, mind you, there is a huge disparity and sometimes less disparity, but still there, between, say, England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. Different approaches. I like the way that Wales is dealing with it. I like the first minister in Wales. He has a very matter-of-factly way of approaching things, and even his tone, which is not sort of all over the place, is quite reassuring. Anyway, at the moment, it seems that Plan B continues. It's not going to be upgraded. It's not going to be downgraded. And Plan B, as far as I'm concerned, is not a million miles away from Plan A, because go into a train, go onto platforms in some of the underground stations, go into the trains themselves. I was in one yesterday, only yesterday. And you know what? So many people are not wearing their masks. And some of them look at you almost defiantly, daring you to say anything so that they would then unleash a tirade, a verbiage of insults against you for being such a wimp and for believing in all this nonsense that we're being fed. Anyway, so we continue as we are. And then we get all those scientists and epidemiologists and God knows what else who come on our TV screens and they try to explain things to us. And you know what? The more scientists talk, the less I begin to follow what they're saying, because they themselves are not only contradicting themselves, but they're desperately trying to be scientists on the one hand and politicians on the other. I find it remarkable how hard they bow down to political mantras and how much they try to sort of, oh yes, you know what, the anti-vaxxers aren't really all anti-vaxxers. There are intenders in there who would wish to take the vaccine if only the circumstances were propitious. Excuse me? I mean, that kind of logic doesn't make sense to me, because the people who haven't taken the jabs, most of them, some of them for good reason, pregnant women, people with other medical issues, but those who demonstrate, who go carrying posters and saying we're not going to take the jabs because this is all a conspiracy, because it doesn't make sense, because of this, that, and the other, these people don't want it ideologically, I suppose. But guess what? When they get the virus and when they end up in A&E and occupy one of those precious beds in our hospitals. Then they start telling the press, the media, the television, whatever, their blogs, oh, you know what, if only I knew what this meant, I would have taken the jab. This is not the words of an intender. This is the word of somebody who's facing his or her mortality and suddenly saying, oh my God, why did I succumb to my ideological convictions? So when scientists talk, some of that talk is pure science and some of it is political science. Sorry about that. And I suppose in a sense, so don't attack me again by sort of saying, here we go again with Harry trying to play the clever one. No, but in a sense, I think that's what's happening with the CDC. The CDC is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States. And its director recently has been talking a lot about the Omicron variant and the COVID-19. And she said that testing at the end of quarantine, you know, the end of the 10 days, 7 days, 5 days, 2 days, however many days the regulations are in your particular patch of the world, that testing at the end of quarantine is no longer needed because PCR tests can stay positive for up to 12 weeks. Can you imagine that? 12 weeks. And yet we are told to quarantine for 5 days, 10 days, 7 days, 2 days. But it seems, according to her again, if I understood her correctly, that in most cases, the vast majority of contagiousness is 2 days before the symptoms happen and 3 days after the symptoms come out. So altogether, apparently, after day 5, you are no longer dangerously contagious. Not only that, but wait for this. People have been talking, well, they talked last year that there wasn't a flu epidemic. And this year, they're also saying that remarkably, there's so much of the COVID-19, but very little flu outbreak, when, as you and I know, that come winter, come January of every new year, hospitals are, what can I say, overwhelmed with people having flu symptoms and going into A&E and ending up in one of the wards and the hospitals saying, don't come in if you don't need to, and blah, blah, blah. But why aren't there more flu cases showing up in the UK, for instance, this year, just like last year? Well, apparently, because those tests do not distinguish well between flu cases and Omicron COVID cases. What does this mean? This means that if you do a test, the test might prove positive, but it's not actually COVID or Delta or Omicron or whatever, it is flu. But then because the test shows positive and it's a test for the antigens for COVID, then you are ticked in the box of COVID. You know, I'm talking to you in this number 55, and I'm trying to make sense of what I am saying myself. And believe you me, I've been living this. People who know me and who know about my travels and my work temperament, etc., know that I've been trying to keep abreast with all that's happening, just to keep my head above water and be able to maintain some sort of a decent life. But at the end of the day, let us be frank about it. We have the science on the one side, we have the economy of a country, particularly a big economy such as the one we have in this country, on the other, and then we also have the administrative decision makers, be that the health secretary, be that the prime minister, be that who that may be, about what we do and how we deal with this variant. When we go out, when we meet people, when we talk, when we have parties, big and small, when we go to the football stadium for a match, or when we go to a gig or whatever, all I can say, and really everything that I said, I've got no idea how many minutes I've been prattling on, but whatever I've said, and I've tried to basically give you a sense, only a sense, a touch, a feel of where we are in this confused mishmash of ideas and advice and changes that happen all the time, and the our political masters doing one thing and saying another thing and not sure where we are, all that. But at the end of the day, it does really come down to common sense. And there are many, many exceptions, I know, in our country and elsewhere across the world. But most people are sensible people. Most people don't want to die. Most people want to do the best they can in order to make sure that they stay safe, and also that their family and friends, kith and kin alike, that they actually are not impacted by a virus that they might carry themselves because of their actions, because of their activities, because of their indifference to everything that is happening around them. So at the end of the day, all I would say, and all I can really say, is what is being said to us for 2 years now. Please be cautious, be careful, use your masks. Don't do things that enhance the margin for danger. Be careful, think of yourself, and think of the other. And when you put that mask on, it's a piece of cloth for most people. Some people have fancy masks, but most people have that piece of blue cloth. I'm not sure that it does a lot. Psychologically, it might help a little bit, and it could also help the other, the person sitting next to you in a train, the person who is in your immediate space, more than it would help you. Do whatever you can. And hopefully, if, again, another scientific prediction, if true, Omicron, once it reaches its peak and then it begins to descend, apparently, we are gradually coming to the end of what we are calling a pandemic, and it would turn, therefore, into an, what is the other one? An epidemic, which means that it's endemic, it's with us, like flu, and we have to take care, we have to take the appropriate measures, and probably we have to take a jab every year the way we do with our flu and some other cases that a lot of people follow as well. That's all I can say. And you know what? Whether any of this makes sense to you or not, I don't know. To me, it makes some sense. Not entirely, not exclusively, but it makes some sense. And I hope it does you too. And yes, I said it's drab out there. I said that the weather isn't very nice, but guess what? We are in winter. So have a nice weekend, and until number 56. And remember, it just takes a few minutes to watch this episode. And indirectly, whether you learn something or not from it, as I try and put everything into a small cauldron, you're also showing your solidarity and your support for all those who are working to try and protect us, not least the wonderful but under-equipped, underfunded NHS. Take care and all the best.